the What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Run the Clock. I'm your host, Thomas Stapleton, joined by my co-host, Aiden Mayer. Aiden, my man, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. So I guess let's get right into it. The first topic we have, Carson Wentz has been traded to the Indianapolis Colts for, I believe, I'll search it up now, but I believe it was a third rounder.
This year, and then a conditional second next year.
That could turn into a first rounder, I believe, if Carson Wentz plays over 75% of the snaps, or if he plays over 70% of the snaps and they make the playoffs. It's very specific. Right. I believe that's what it is. So with that being said, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this trade for them, Aiden, for both teams in this sense?
Well, first I'll start with the Colts. And for the Colts, I think it was a necessary move, right? This Colts roster right now, they have a great defense. They have a fantastic offensive line. Frank Reich, I think he's a legit head coach in the NFL. And although they really need that number one wide receiver, for the most part, this is a really good roster that felt like one quarterback away from Super Bowl contention. And we look at the Colts right now. You go after get a guy like Carson Wentz, who had an MVP caliber season before he went out with an injury in 2017, that season. If you can get that Carson Wentz, the Colts are absolutely tight Super Bowl contenders. Now, it's just a matter of which Carson Wentz are you going to get. At the end of the day, even if Carson Wentz hits a ceiling, I don't see this Colts team winning a Super Bowl. That's why I refuse to give them an A+ in this trade. But considering what they gave up, I don't think they gave up too much to go out and get Carson Wentz. And I don't know if he has that it factor. That's my one thing. But I like the move. Frank Reich, obviously, they're reuniting. That's where Carson Wentz had his most success. That's a head coach he's comfortable with. We saw what happened last season. I felt like a lot of the reason for his struggles was because him and Doug Peterson had such a disconnect. They didn't talk for weeks. That's awful. If your quarterback and head coach aren't going to talk for weeks, you're not going to be successful.
Right.
So for the Colts, Frank Reich, they've got that connection. If those two can click and Carson Wentz can regain some of that confidence, the Colts are they're in the running. But at the end of the day, even if they hit their ceiling, I don't see them winning a Super Bowl under Carson Wentz, but I understand the move, and I still like it for the Colts.
What about for the Eagles side of things? How do you feel about it for them?
To be honest, I don't feel great if I'm an Eagles fan about this trade. Now, I don't think they should have got 2 first-round picks for Carson Wentz, because let's sit here and say this, that conditional second's basically a guarantee to become a first, right? In my opinion, at least. But they shouldn't have got 2 firsts like they were originally asking for. And at the end of the day, when you look at what the Eagles put into Carson Wentz, what they invested, all of this money, all this draft capital to trade up and get Carson Wentz, what they ended up getting out of him didn't match that investment. Mm-hmm. So for the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm sitting here kind of saying, again, we all have to match up with that investment. I think what they got back from Carson Wentz from a compensation standpoint was relatively fair, but when we also factor in what they invested in this guy, I'm sitting there and I'm not happy. I believe they have to pay Carson Wentz's contract for the first year, which isn't a good thing at all, although I don't think they desperately needed that cap space either. They're a team that's going to go into a rebuild. They've already they're going to cut Deshaun Jackson. They're going to waive Alshon Jeffrey. It's clear this team's going into a rebuild, but if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm sitting here saying the investment that we put in does not match the compensation of what we got out of Carson Wentz.
So I hear what you're saying about like the whole compensation thing and what they put into him, but he is on a massive, massive contract and played terrible. So the fact that they could even get a third rounder and something that could be a first, I think that's pretty remarkable considering his contract.
Well, that's the thing. I agree with you in that sense. I said the draft compensation that they got back for Carson Wentz in this trade, that's fine. It's the fact that they invested so much to go out and get Carson Wentz, and then what they got out of him in this trade, along with his play and the fact that they paid him all that money, that goes back into the investment now. The compensation they got back just doesn't match that full-on investment. What they got back in this trade, considering where Carson Wentz is at right now, I think that was fair.
You might be right. For the Eagles side of things, I know you had to get rid of Wentz. Like it had to happen. There was no avoiding it. But I felt like they gave up on him too soon. I felt like he gave up on himself too soon. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say Carson Wentz was perfect last year. He was far from it. But I don't completely blame him. I blame a lot of the situation. First of all, his supporting cast was absolutely terrible. It was horrible. And the coach, Doug Peterson, is just not a good head coach. He's just not. That's the reason they got rid of him. He's not good enough. The front office failed him. The team failed him. The coach, there was clearly a disconnect. So everything that could have gone wrong for Carson Wentz went wrong. And he played terribly. Like, that's what's going to happen. When you surround a quarterback with terrible, terrible talent, they're not going to play well. But I do think that if you took the steps forward to put Carson Wentz in a better situation, and I know it was going to be difficult, I still feel like there could have been something there with Carson Wentz and the Eagles. I don't know what it is. I don't know like what their ceiling or floor as a team would have been, but I just felt like this whole situation was handled terribly, both by Wentz and by the front office and the team. It was messy. I get it. You had to do it. It was kind of out of your hands at that point, but I just feel like they gave up on him too soon. But I know a lot of people probably think otherwise, considering how bad of a season Carson Wentz just had.
Well, the failure was mutual, right? I mean, it wasn't just the situation. It was also Carson Wentz. It both played a factor. Like, I don't think Doug Peterson handled it correctly. I don't think Howie Roseman did a good enough job.
Not at all.
Did a good enough job constructing this team at all. Injuries also played a factor. The offensive line was in shambles with injuries this season. But Carson Wentz also, just as a leader, this is my problem with Carson Wentz. The talent is there, but he lost confidence in himself. In the leadership, I just don't think it's there. You know, we looked at Aaron Rodgers this year. He seemed motivated when this team drafted Jordan Love in the first round. We looked at Tom Brady when they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. I talked about Tom Brady. I felt like that was a big thing for the New England Patriots. I loved the Jimmy Garoppolo pick. That was one of my biggest reasons I loved it, because I felt like it motivated Tom Brady. Tom Brady gets motivated by those things. The greats don't let them get that down. They let that motivate them. With Carson Wentz, it was the opposite. They draft Jalen Hurts, and he got down on himself. He started losing trust in the organization, I guess if you want to put it that way. That to me, that's my problem with Carson Wentz. The talent is there, but it's the leadership qualities. Is that just that knack, that it factor that people talk about. I just don't know if it's there for Carson Wentz. But at the end of the day, to be honest, I'm going to have to disagree. I think it was time to part ways with Carson Wentz. I don't see how this thing gets any better. They don't have a surplus of draft capital. They didn't really have much cap space. And Carson Wentz did not want to be there. You know, they signed, I can't even pronounce his last name, but the offensive coordinator, Nick, I can't pronounce his last name, offensive coordinator from the Indianapolis Colts. And that was like, okay, they want to try to make this thing work, but I just don't know if it was salvageable. Get the first and the third and just move on.
And I think a big part of it was the front office and Howie Roseman. I mean, they drafted Jalen Reagor.
Yep.
Over Justin Jefferson, which was just a brutal selection. And I mean, then like you would have had Justin Jefferson. So if he was able to replicate that same success, you would have been fine. The offensive line, like you said, was in complete shambles all year. I believe I know Brandon Brooks, I believe, was out with a big injury.
Johnson was banged up. I think Andre Dillard was out. They had
literally their entire offensive line was out. So I thought
minus Jason Kelce.
Yeah. I feel like if injured, I feel like there had to have been things that would have gone right. I feel like the front office should have been better. I felt like injury luck wasn't exactly on their side, but I felt like if everything really pieced together, it could have worked. But I do agree in a sense that it was time to move on. Unfortunately. And for the Colts, I want to say it's a buy low, but I don't know if I can really say that. I mean, his value, Jesus, it really couldn't be any lower. At third and what could be a first, that's not ideal.
And they don't have to pay the first year of the contract. I think it was a fine investment.
That's fine, but I agree with you. But also at the same time, like you are putting a pretty heavy investment into a quarterback that just had one of the worst seasons of a quarterback. Like last year, it was terrible.
They had to do it. They had to attack. It was time. They have the roster in place. And although I wish they could have got somebody with that it factor to really, for me to see them as that like tier A contender, I like that they're being aggressive and putting their eggs in this basket.
You don't think Jacob Eason has that it factor?
No. We talked about this last year. You like Jacob Eason. I did not. I was not a fan of Jacob Eason in the draft process.
I like Jacob Eason, but that's besides the point. I mean, yeah, for the Colts, you had to do it, but it's also like this could backfire because if Carson Wentz is the Carson Wentz we saw last year, it's going to be terrible.
He won't be. He's going to the.
I mean, he can't be any. He literally cannot be any worse. If he's
with the system put in place around him, there's no way he'll be that bad again.
Yeah, and not even that. Like he literally cannot be worse. Like I tweeted on Twitter, he's gonna have a bounce back season. That's really not saying that much. He was terrible last year. People are acting like I said like he had like a down year. That's not a down year. That's a horrible year. A bounce back really isn't saying much when you have that bad of a season. So I do think it'll work for the Colts as a team. I don't know. Like you said, they still kind of lack that true number one guy. T.Y. Hilton kind of fell off last year.
He's a free agent too, so they might even lose him.
Yeah, so they might lose him. Michael Pittman, I like him, but I don't know if he's ready to take that next step necessarily at all.
Not to a number one, no, he isn't.
No, not at all. I don't know if this. Do they own their first round pick this year?
Yes. Yeah, the 21 maybe.
I'm curious about where they are and who they could potentially draft there because I was scouting some of the wide receivers today. I really like this class. I hope we can discuss it in a episode later down the line. But I really like this wide receiver class, and I feel like if they can get one of those guys, I feel like they can be really, really good if everything clicks. If Carson Wentz and Frank Reich they really connect, and Carson Wentz, I don't even expect Carson Wentz to be MVP Carson Wentz. That Carson Wentz is gone. But if he can be a top 10 to 15 quarterback in the NFL, that's fine. When you have that offensive line, when you have that run game, when you have, if obviously we're assuming that they're going to take a receiver here, a decent receiver core and a great defense, like I just don't see how that fails. And I don't know where they would rank amongst like contenders in the AFC, but I would say the only teams that are definitively better than them are the Chiefs and the Bills, and that's it. I don't. Again, I really have to look. Obviously, things are going to look different season, but I really do truly think that they could be potentially a third best team in the AFC, and I was high on them last year, even with Phillip Rivers, and they didn't completely meet my expectations, but they were still very impressive to me. But now it's going to get fun. We're going to move into our next topic. Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow. Who is going to have the more successful career? And Aiden, you think, even though, and I'll give you credit for this because I know you're locked and loaded with information. And after the season Justin Jefferson just had, where he won Offensive Rookie of the Year, had one of the best quarterback seasons ever, you are still taking Joe Burrow as the best quarterback.
I'm not giving up that easy
in this draft. I'll let you take it away, but I'm curious to hear this.
Well, the thing is, like, look. At the end of the day, Justin Herbert had a great season. He proved me wrong. I was not particularly high on Justin Herbert coming to the draft. I don't think you were either. I'll admit that, front up here. But he did have a great season. Justin Herbert was spectacular this year. And admittedly, when they were both on the field this year, Justin Herbert was a little better. Granted, he did have a better offensive line, much better defense to help support him with the whole record thing, even though the Chargers really couldn't close out games. And I thought his receiving core was a little better when fully healthy. And Joe Burrow really did not have any help. Terrible offensive line. Mediocre receiving core, although I do think their receiving core is underrated in Cincinnati. And then the defense, frankly, was very bad. It was this year. And some of that was just due to the talent. They need more talent. They're in a rebuild. They're in a rebuild right now. So with Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, I just think he's special. Now, this is where I don't want to put anything against Justin Herbert because we're not sure yet. I'm not going to say Justin Herbert doesn't have the it factor. And when I talk about the it factor, that is the ability to show up in the big moments and to have that leadership quality, just to have that knack, that guy that doesn't make the same mistake twice. And although we haven't even seen Joe Burrow play a playoff game, but from what I've seen from him, playing, what I've seen from him in the interviews, from the things that I've heard, the way that he carries himself. And, I'm going to say what I saw in college, I'm not going to compare that to the NFL, but he did play very well under the spotlight. I will sit up here and say on the table, Joe Burrow has that it factor. I truly believe that. And Justin Herbert, better arm strength. He's a little bit better of an athlete, but Joe Burrow still has fine arms. He doesn't really have a weakness. Joe Burrow really just doesn't have a weakness. He's talked about, he wins in the film room. I just think he has that it factor. And this is where I don't want to hold things against Justin Herbert. I'm not saying Justin Herbert doesn't have that. I just don't know. I wouldn't honestly bet on it because very few guys do. But I'm going to sit here and say right now, I know Joe Burrow has that. And that's what separates the good quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks. So that's where I stand with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert.
All right.
Let's see what he says.
And the first, we have to address it because it's just a reality. Joe Burrow is coming off a really significant injury. It's, whether you want to admit it or not, I know he's a tough dude. I think he's going to come back from it, and he's still going to be good. But with that being said, there are no guarantees, especially with an injury like that. Now, even if he does come back fine, I don't know if his mobility is going to be the same. Do you agree there? Do you think his mobility will be the same?
Oh, no, it won't. It won't be the same exact thing, no.
Okay. So right there, that's going to hinder his ability to, kind of get out of the pocket and make plays, correct? It's going to hinder it. I don't know. He won't be bad in that area necessarily, but it's going to hinder it. Now, another thing with Joe Burrow is that his arm, he's very accurate. He's got a great understanding for the game, but he doesn't have a great arm. And when I say that, I mean, if you look at his passer rating on deep throws down the field, it's bad. I'm gonna pull up the numbers now, but it is astonishingly bad. Okay, down the field, down around the center, it is 51.6. To the right, it's 59.3, and to the left, it's 70.5. Those are his passer rating numbers when throwing downfield.
Did you say Joe Burrow doesn't have a great arm?
Yes, and I just backed it up too.
All right. Well, let me educate you. There's a difference between arm strength
and
having a good arm. Because Joe Burrow is one of the most active. He's already up in a tier that is astonishing for a rookie in accuracy. His ability to elevate receivers, like he comes in, he's already clicking with the receivers. With a guy like Auden Tate, okay, I'm going to throw it to the outside of his frame because he doesn't get a lot of separation, but he's a massive dude. The guy like T. Higgins, I'm going to lead him with his chest. Like, he just understands those types of things, and he's already elite in those areas that veterans aren't even elite in. And yeah, you talk about how, his mobility is going to hinder. I can't disagree with that. But with Joe Burrow, he's never been like extremely mobile. I still think his mobility is going to be enough to get by. And here's the thing, though. With Joe Burrow, what makes him so good outside the pocket is he understands when to get outside the pocket. He keeps his eyes up. And his fundamentals throwing outside the pocket are very, very good. It's never because he was a great athlete. He just understood when to do it and how to do it. And it was never really as much of an athletic thing. And yes, you need some athleticism to get outside the pocket. I just don't think it's going to be enough to hinder that to a great extent. And his deep field accuracy, I can't even disagree with you there. Joe Burrow went ahead and said, what can I get? I remember Colin Cowherd asked him, what can you get better at? And the first thing he talked about was my plays downfield. I wasn't particularly accurate on those passes. He came right up front and said that's an issue. And I can't deny that either. It wasn't great. He doesn't have like a super strong arm. But at the end of the day, I am confident that he can grow in that area. And that's really the one knock you could really put on him.
When you say he can grow in that area, how do you think he's going to grow?
Well, some of it just comes with experience. I mean, look, like Joe Burrow's never going to be I will go right here and say that Justin Herbert will always be a better downfield deep ball passer than Joe Burrow. If that's what you're trying to get out of me, it's not going to happen. I know Justin Herbert is a better deep ball thrower than Joe Burrow, but I'm taking Joe Burrow in a lot of other areas. And again, yeah, Justin Herbert, he can throw the deep ball better. He's a better athlete. Joe Burrow's coming off this injury.
He has better arm. Justin Herbert has better arm talent than Joe Burrow.
He has better arm strength. He has better arm strength, deep field accuracy. But when it comes to accuracy, middle of the field, leading and even short accuracy, when it comes to leading receivers in space, things like that, adjusting to other wide receivers, his arm talent, that in that sense, I'm going to take Joe Burrow there.
Okay.
So it's not just about arm strength. It's not just about deep field accuracy. Let's factor in those other things too.
But those things are extremely important. And when you say, and Joe Burrow's mobility is going to be hindered. And with that offensive line, I don't know if he's going to even have time to get outside the pocket.
Okay, but can it get worse? Can it get worse? You talked about how with Carson Wentz, this is going back to the Carson Wentz thing. You said,
yes.
Can it get any worse? With the Bengals offensive line, can it get any worse?
Yeah, you're right. It really can't get any worse. But
it can't. They have the 5th overall pick right now in a loaded offensive line class. There's some good offensive linemen. They're going to at least sign a Joe Thuney. They're going to at least draft a Penei Sewell or a Rashawn Slater or a Christian Darrisaw. They're at least going to get one elite guy in this, at least one this offseason, in my opinion. It's going to happen.
If Penei Sewell is there, then they're going to take him. There's no debate there. But at number 5, I'm not taking Slater and I'm not taking Darrisaw. I know you love Darrisaw.
Okay, this is the whole rest of the draft, though. There's plenty of depth. And as I said, Joe Thuney, you know how good he is. As Patriots fans, I love Joe Thuney. He's great. But the Patriots aren't really anywhere close to signing a deal with him again. And the Bengals are kind of in the market for Thuney. So even if they don't draft the guy, which I think is kind of unlikely, they sign a guy. Maybe even both happens. Maybe even they invest a first-round pick and they sign a guy like Joe Thuney. This offensive line will get better. And then when we look at divisions, I'm going to bring this up because it's who has a better career. Who's in Herbert's division right now?
The Chiefs.
Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow, I mean, I'm looking at it. The Steelers, are they a good team right now? Yes, but they're starting to crumble. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger's not getting any younger. They don't have the answer there. The Ravens, personally, I don't see Lamar Jackson being a top 10 quarterback for too much longer. Joe Burrow is going to surpass him. And then the Browns. To be completely honest, I don't know if I'm going to say this just yet. By the end of next season, Joe Burrow will be the best quarterback in that division. He'll be the best quarterback. And I'm not going to say that just yet because Joe Burrow played half the season. And Lamar Jackson, especially I'm not a big fan of him, he still is a top 10 quarterback. But by the end of next season, Joe Burrow will be the best quarterback in the AFC North. Justin Herbert will never be the best quarterback in that division. Patrick Mahomes will always be the best.
I mean, I do feel like that's an unfair argument. Here's what I'll say. Situations-wise, I think Herbert has a better supporting cast. I think Herbert has guys around him that are going to help him more than Joe Burrow has right now, which I think is...
But at the end of the day, that's the great thing about Joe Burrow. He elevates the play of his teammates.
I mean, what was their record with Joe Burrow last year? I'm just saying.
It was 2-7-1. It wasn't not very good, but what was Justin Herbert's record this season with a better supporting cast? Not
quite sure. Don't have that on me right now, but
I think they had 6 wins. Maybe that was with a better supporting cast. So we're looking at it right now. Joe Burrow's really on track in 16 games to have basically the same exact record as Justin Herbert, despite a worse supporting cast in his rookie season.
Whoa. Hold up. Herbert didn't start for the first 2 games, I believe.
He didn't start for the first game. I think.
A game or 2.
And they won that game.
Which game?
The game against the Bengals.
Oh, well, I mean, it was.
And here's the thing with that game, too, that I'm going to mention, just because, we froze up there for a second. Joe Burrow led them onto a game-winning drive. He led them into the red zone, threw a touchdown to A.J. Green to win that game, and then they called it back because of offensive pass interference on A.J. Green, even though it was a great ball from Joe Burrow, and then a chip shot from, I think it was Reggie Bullock. I don't even know who their kicker was. He shanks the thing. So the Bengals, in all reality, should have won that game. And Joe Burrow wasn't even particularly great in that game, but he showed up when it mattered most. That was his first game, probably one of his worst of the season.
Yeah, I'll give you credit there. I do remember watching that game. He was spectacular in that. I believe it was like 2 minutes, maybe even less than that. Perfect 2-minute drill.
That last drive was awesome.
Yeah, 2 more years of Lamar being the star QB in the division until I gotta agree there, to be honest. I wouldn't even say Lamar Jackson is a star QB, but I gotta see
in the division. In the division.
Yeah, in the division. Yeah. That
I don't know. I'm telling you, Joe Burrow will be considered the best quarterback in that division by the end of next year.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. Here's the end of the day. I'm just going to leave it off on this. Joe Burrow has that it factor. I know it. I can sit up here right now and say, I know Joe Burrow has that it factor. Justin Herbert, I'm not going to say he doesn't. I'm not going to hold that against you because we haven't seen it yet. But I'm not necessarily going to bet on it. It's tough. Not many guys do. I know Joe Burrow has that, and he has enough athletic ability, enough tool. He's phenomenal accuracy, and I know he has that it factor. I'll sit up here right now, and if I'm wrong, you can shame me for it later, but I know he has that it factor.
I'm going to take the guy who's not coming off a major injury and continuously showed that he is better.
The great thing with Joe Burrow's injury is he recovered from that so quickly. He's not like fully recovered, obviously, but I just said he's not fully recovered, but he's going along so quickly. He's looking really good. He's going to be good to go through. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be, the same thing. I do think he'll continue to progress, but obviously this injury just hold him back a little bit. I'm not saying that, but I'm not good. It's not enough for me to hop off the Joe Burrow hype train.
Well, anyways, I'm going to take the guy who has shown more athletic ability, has a better arm, to be quite frank, and is not coming off a major injury and has a really good sporting
There's a difference between arm strength and arm talent. There's a difference. There's a difference between arm strength and arm talent. I'll say it again.
Either way, I think Herbert still wins. But anyways, let's move on to the next topic because I know you're already upset, and now you're going to be even more upset. We're talking about the Boston Celtics. They are, I believe, 500. I believe they are 15-15 at the moment, and they just lost yesterday to the New Orleans Pelicans after leading by what, like 50? Not 50, obviously, but like 24. 24 points, I believe they were leading to the Pelicans, who are sitting as the 11th seed in the Western Conference. The Celtics, yes, they are 15-15. They are the 6th seed, one game ahead of the Knicks. And the Knicks, if the Knicks are playing tonight, they are not playing tonight, but the Knicks could very well surpass them soon. So I'll let you get started because I imagine you have quite a lot of things to say. So I'll let you take it away.
Just starting with yesterday's loss, every week, this team has a loss that goes down as like, that's the worst loss of the season. And then it's like, how will they top their loss to the Pistons? How will they, which we've lost to them twice, by the way. How will they top their loss to the Wizards? And then they top it each and every week. It's insane. This Celtics team has so many problems right now. So many. First and foremost, I will say Jason Tatum getting COVID, Marcus Smart's injury. Those things do play a factor, but I'm not going to say that's why they've had issues. No way am I going to say that at all. I'm not going to blame that on one bit, but it is a factor. But first of all, there's not enough talent around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It's as simple as that. Kemba Walker's their third best player, and leading into my next point, Kemba Walker's been atrocious this season. He'll have a very good game, and then he'll have an awful game like you saw yesterday, and he's your third best player. He doesn't play back-to-backs because of his knee injury. Then you have guys like Jeff Teague, who, like Jeff Teague, is a couple games away in my book, and I'm giving him a long leash of getting cut. Like, he's done nothing good for this.
Wow.
Awful. I'm being dead serious. Like, what has he done? He didn't play at all. He's got himself benched, and this was Brad Stevens, who gave him a fairly long leash, and I'm willing to give him a little more time. But Jeff Teague, who I was a fan of, I was a fan of that signing. He's been horrendous this season. This Celtics team, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, at the end of the day, those guys have to be leaders. They're not leaders. Jaylen Brown, I think, has showed a little bit of leadership. I think there's something there. Jason Tatum, no. Oh, no. And those are your star players. I know they're 23 and 22. That's why I'm going to be a little patient with this. I don't think it's the Celtics' year. And people ask me, what can this team do? Wait, don't invest in this team this year. Don't do it. Unless we're getting like Kyle Lowry because we're giving up Kemba Walker and a little bit more just to get rid of that contract, or it's like a second-round pick for PJ Tucker, some great deal like that, or we're getting rid of Kemba Walker's contract for a guy like Kyle Lowry just to dump that contract. Sure, but if we're spending multiple first-round picks or trading Aaron Nesmith and a first-round pick for PJ Tucker, just know Brad Stevens on the hot seat.
Brad Stevens, we gotta have that conversation. We gotta have the Brad.
He's not on the hot seat yet.
He's not. He should be. He should be.
Here's my thing with this. Brad Stevens. The big issue with him is I've said this before. Coaching is so much about ego managing nowadays. At the end of the day, if you're a championship contending team, you have to do more ego managing than you do actually strategizing. Because at the end of the day, it's just give the ball to your best player. And Brad Stevens, he can really coach up some of those middle tier guys, your Grant Williams of the world. But Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, those star players, he hasn't done it. And Brad Stevens, when I say he's on the hot seat, as of now, no. But if this continues, I think there's some discussion to be had. Part of it is I just want to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown grow up, and maybe they'll grow a little more of appreciation. I don't know, but they just act like they've arrived and they don't need Brad Stevens. That's my problem with this team. They don't have the leadership from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You need that from your young players. And again, at the end of the day, people ask me, what do you do to fix this team? Just be patient. This team's going to suck this year. We haven't won back-to-back games in a month. We'll beat the Raptors, and then we lose to the Pistons and the Wizards, and then we lose to the Atlanta Hawks, beat the Denver Nuggets, and we lose to the Atlanta Hawks. We barely beat the Atlanta Hawks, and we lose to the Pelicans. In yesterday's game, I will say Brad Stevens did get out coached yesterday. Stan Van Gundy makes a couple little adjustments at halftime, and Brad Stevens looks lost. He looks lost. So this Celtics team, I mean, they're you've watched some of the games. I've watched all of the games. It's egregious to watch. But I guess I'm just going to suck it up and hope that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown just trust that, because at this point, though, you don't invest in this team right now. What do you have to say? I can't. I'm getting a headache as we speak.
I think it's time to have the Brad Stevens conversation, and not now. And if not now, then by the end of the season, I think it's time to have the Danny Ainge conversation, because Danny Ainge has, I don't want to say he is the problem, but the Celtics time and time again have been very stingy with their assets and have not gone out and made a big this summer.
I'm sorry, that was so weird, but I mean, that is what really gets me. Mm-hmm. Just give them up, Danny. You had so many picks and so many opportunities. Like, he could have traded, and this wasn't just about the assets, but this is Danny Ainge's problem. In the big picture, he always has to get a deal. It's like Bill Belichick. He always has to get a deal. He can never just make a move that's smart. He has to pants the opponent. He has to pants the other GM. And Danny Ainge could get, for Gordon Hayward, who was going to leave anyway, could have got Miles Turner and Doug McDermott, and he said, I wanted more. What do you mean you wanted? And then he goes around and just goes out and gets a trade exception. This is my problem with Danny Ainge.
He's not going to use.
One part, as you mentioned, he's too stingy with the assets. He hoards them. He hoards his assets. And then we talk about he always has to get a deal. It always has to be a deal with Danny Ainge. If it's a fair trade, no. I need a few more picks just to flex a muscle. I hate that. That's what I really hate about this team, and it's holding them back. That's why we're in this position right now. It's a large part.
I believe we talked about the Orlando Magic last episode, or one of the episodes later back, and we were talking about how they were stuck in purgatory. And I think the Celtics are kind of stuck in a higher tier of purgatory, where they're not fully there to be a championship contender because of a few things that are holding them back, but they're also not willing to fully rebuild. They can't. You have Tatum and Brown, two bona fide stars at this point in time, and they keep holding on to their younger guys. And it's like I don't want to say establish a sense of direction, but they need to start. There is a direction. They need to go all in. Maybe not this season, because not this season. But I don't know, because think about this: the East is really, really wide open. It is. I mean, the Nets are very good, but beatable. The Brooklyn.
That's why I was so like last year. Last year was really the year. It was like, okay, the Celtics aren't going to win a title, but it was even more wide open last year. Now the Nets are here. I think that's a really. I still think it's open this year, but last year it was even more open.
Absolutely,
and it's starting to close a little bit. So last year was the year that I wanted to see the Celtics make the finals, get some of that experience, and then we reshuffle the deck a little bit. Heading into next season. This team, at the end of the day, though, they are not title contenders right now. And the Celtics are currently in a position where we just have to be patient and hope Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the answers. And we have to get them a real third star and a better supporting cast at the end of the day. That's what the Celtics team has to do. If you want the complete and honest truth, based off what Danny Ainge and even Mike Gorman, the disbelief that they've had. Mike Gorman's a just total Celtic green teamer. And he's called Tyler Zeller untouchable. And he loves Jared Solinger back in the day. And Mike Gorman said this team they're not title contenders. Danny Ainge just said this roster, frankly, isn't that good. These are this is coming from the greenest of green teamers. These are the guys that call Marcus Smart untouchable and all this stuff. And these guys are finally admitting this team, we got some problems. They're finally coming to that realization. If you want the complete and honest truth, the Celtics are in a higher tier of purgatory, as you said, because we're going to make the playoffs at the end of the day. But I believe they're kind of in a sense of we're almost retooling, rebuilding, because we're not title contenders this year, and we're just kind of waiting for the kids to grow up at this point. That's what it is. We're waiting for Aaron Nesmith, Peyton Pritchard, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, the whole crew, all the kids to grow up. And in the meantime, we are watching this product, which is awful. This product is terrible. And
with the Brad Stevens, it's like, all right, what do you? He doesn't really manage egos. We saw that. We saw that 2 years ago. With that just complete disaster of a season and a team. And we're kind of seeing it this year to an extent, although I don't think they have kind of that narrative with Kyrie Irving. And like some of his lineups that he runs, I don't know what his obsession is with the double big lineup. Like I remember he started Tyson Thompson. He ran Tice and Robert Williams to finish off the game in overtime. Like it's absolutely brutal. The bench is atrocious. Aaron Nesmith is officially your sixth man. Congrats on that, by the way.
Woo!
So
we're gonna win. We're really that was the recipe for success. Aaron Nesmith, after being scratched, he actually was scratched against, I think it was the Raptors or the Pistons, and then directly after, I think it was the Pistons game, he was the first guy. He's been the first guy off the bench ever since then. And to be completely honest, I think part of that is just this bench sucks, but also part of it is Danny Ainge sitting there like, okay, let's get him the experience because we're kind of just starting to play for next year and the year after. We need to upgrade these guys. We need to make sure these guys are ready to either entice their trade value, upgrade their trade value, or improve their play. So that way next year and the year after we get a better supporting cast because they are finally aware of the reality. The Celtics don't have it figured out to the point where they're title contenders for the next 10 years. That's what they've always thought. The Celtics are finally realizing it isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and I'm happy about that because it was time. They needed to realize that's the only real good part I can get out of this, I guess.
And Nesmith's a good player. Like, I really do think, maybe not now necessarily, I really think he can be a really solid, a 6'6" wing who can knock down threes and play solid defense. Like, that's a really good player. Maybe not a star, almost certainly not a star, but a good quality starter in the NBA if he can really get things figured out. And become an above-average defender. And that could be someone that you play alongside a Jaylen Brown and a Jason Tatum as kind of your third wing. But the problem is they don't have rim protection. They don't have a bench. They don't have a coach who really inspires people. They have a GM who is way too stingy with his assets and doesn't really do anything. Like you said, they could have got Defensive Player of the Year,
Miles
Turner, and Doug McDermott.
There's a trade exception.
And the trade exception that I'd be willing to bet he's not going to use this trade deadline because Danny Ainge is going to pull what he always does, and he is not going to use it.
And may I add, again, like the leadership with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, you just don't have that leadership from your star players and the ball movement. They can't go a game. They can't go a game with at least one quarter of just constant ISO ball, and that's really what hurts the Celtics. When they're at their best is when they're moving the ball. The Celtics play really well when they move the ball. They just can't do it for a whole game. I'm sorry. I know I just ranted on the Celtics.
No, it's fine.
You stayed calm. I'm glad you did because, man, we might have broke the speakers in here. But really, the Celtics seem just so frustrating, and I really thought we'd be in a better spot than this.
Yeah. That's what's weird about the NBA sometimes, especially as a fan. Like the Thunder, we're terrible. We are a bad product to watch, but that's okay because we were supposed to be bad. The Celtics are supposed to be I don't want to say they were supposed to be title contenders, but they were supposed to be Eastern Conference contenders. Yeah. And
as we always are, we have been for the past 5 years, Eastern Conference Finals contenders, not title contenders. We're not fully rebuilding. Man, you know what? At this point, Evan Mobley to the Celtics.
That's where
I'm at right now. Evan Mobley to the Celtics. It's so unrealistic. But
we will definitely talk about him in future episodes. But we're going to talk about some other college guys. We're going to talk a little bit of NBA draft, particularly two freshmen playing for the Tennessee Volunteers right now. Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer, who started off the season kind of as role players. They were, in and out of the starting lineup. They were role players, as I just said. But in the past couple of weeks, Rick Barnes has given them the keys to kind of the offense, and they've shown some incredible flashes of not only star potential, but they've been really productive in some games, super efficient. They just go out and they look like they're just really good. They're like, there's no other way to put it. They are both really good players, not only right now, but they have a lot of NBA potential. Why don't you talk a little bit about Keon and Springer? Because I'll talk about them after.
All right, I'll take Keon. You can do Springer. Yeah. I don't know. I forget who you kept going back and forth. I don't know. And I don't blame you. It's pretty close between the two. I would be lying. But with Keon Johnson, similar to Jaden Springer, plays with a very high motor. I'm reading off my scouting report. We scouted these two. Nice defensive versatility. Again, the high motor. Defensively, those are the two things that stand out first and foremost with Keon Johnson. Offensively, he does a little bit of everything. You called him a jack of all trades, and I like that because he can do a little bit of playmaking. He can take it to the rack a little bit. His three-point shot overall, I think it's subpar, but he can hit it down. He can hit some shots every once in a while. He just doesn't put any leg into a shot whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it's fixable.
The thing that I don't like about Keon Johnson, I say this, I like him as a prospect. I think he's a very good prospect, but the thing that holds him back a little bit potential-wise is he does not have a calling card offensively. His three-point shot, as I said, it's subpar. He's more of just a secondary playmaker at best at this point. And he's not like an elite slasher or anything, or an elite, his pull-up game's nice, but is that what you're going to call a calling card in the NBA? No, especially for somebody who's not going to be like a, bona fide superstar. With Keon Johnson, I really like him. But at the end of the day, I just don't think when it comes, you'll hear a lot of people say he has a really high upside. I definitely think there's some upside there. I just don't think there's like the ceiling's as high as other people are going to tell you. But I like him as a prospect. I think he's a well-rounded guy with a really good work ethic, high motor. But I'll let you take Jaden Springer.
So for Springer, it's kind of along the same thing, just a really tenacious defender. Like, I'm telling you, like I've tweeted out things on Twitter of clips of him just the ultimate competitor, like just goes out. I compared him to a Kyle Lowry, and I think that's perfect. Like just a guy that's going to give his all and just play his heart out on the defensive end of the floor. He's 6'4". I don't think his wingspan is very long, but he defends, I would say, 2, maybe 3 positions. He can hold his own against bigger defenders because he uses his body really well. He's almost like a bulldog. He uses it offensively and defensively. Yeah. And then on offense, really patient. He's not an insane ball handler, but he's pretty good at this point in time. He's got a lot of wiggle. I think that there's shot creation upside down the line. He gets into the lane really well. Very patient when he gets inside. Like, you're not going to catch him, like, blowing past someone and, like, carelessly throwing up a layup. Like, he'll go in. He'll, do, like, a little pump fake. He'll get you on the up. He'll, finish through contact. He's got a really intriguing mid-range pull-up game. He shoots the 3-ball really well. I haven't seen much off the dribble from 3-point range, but Tennessee doesn't take a lot of threes in general. But the mid-range, the flashes he shows as a mid-range shooter, the ability to get to the basket, he's got really nice playmaking vision. I think he's got a foundation for success. Like, we've talked about that with other guys. He's got the shooting. He's got the scoring ability. He's got some playmaking. I don't think he's a primary playmaker at the next level, but I think if you play him off like a Luka, like he can be a secondary ball handler kind of guy to maybe a bigger offensive initiator. And then, on defense, he's just going to play his heart out. And I feel like guys that it's with Keon Johnson, and it's something I love about him too. They do the little things and they show the flashes of the big things. And I feel like that is really, really important because when you kind of play a smaller role in college, we're not going to necessarily see all this star potential. But if you do all the little things really, really well and you bust your butt and you show the flashes of being able to do the bigger things. I have Keon Johnson 5th on my board because his flashes are extremely, extremely impressive. I compare him to someone like a Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler shoots 33% from 3 for his entire career and has had maybe 5 seasons of averaging around 20 points per game, but is still a fringe top 10 player in the league because of what he brings as a defender, as a playmaker. And I think that's what Keon Johnson can bring as well. They've got that same kind of patience and grittiness. And they're both really athletic. They both got a good mid-range game. Obviously, Jimmy Butler is a very high outcome for him, so it's not a complete direct comp, but I think that if there was a star that Keon Johnson plays like, it's Jimmy Butler. And with Jaden Springer, I see a lot of those things as well. I don't think he's quite as good athletically. I don't think he's quite as switchable defensively as Keon Johnson. But I think he's more polished. I think he's very safe. Like at worst, he's going to be
absolutely.
He's going to be a starting point guard for 10 plus years.
I would say with Keon Johnson, sorry to cut you off, but he's also a fairly safe prospect as well. And he does have some upside as well. I don't think Jaden Springer has as much upside, but both have high floors for sure.
High floors and pretty high. I like those guys as well. Like someone like Devin Vassell, perfect example of that last year. You knew he was going to be a 3-and-D guy. Desmond Bane. I didn't think Desmond Bane had such a high ceiling, but
he didn't.
But like high floor, high ceiling guys, I feel like those. I just don't see a world where those guys are left out of your lottery, and I have them both top 10. In fact, I have them both top 8. But Aiden, I just have one question before we wrap this up. Which one do you think is better as a prospect? Which one would you take?
I am giving the edge to Keon Johnson here because I do think there's a little more upside there. As you said, there's a little more versatility. Again, it just really comes down to potential because I see the floor for both of them. I think Jaden Springer's floor is honestly a bit higher, but both have very high floors. So, you know what? Tiebreaker, I'm giving it to Keon Johnson because he has a higher ceiling. But at the end of the day, I like both these prospects. I don't adore either of them. I don't see crazy upside. I think the upside gets a little overrated with these guys. But at the end of the day, like you said with Keon Johnson, Jaden Springer, the upside, decent. Keon Johnson, I think it's a little higher, though. So that's my tiebreaker for them. I don't think any of them are going to be superstar players by any means, but there's a little bit upside there, especially with Keon Johnson.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. If you go on my Instagram page, you can check out my big board 1.0 that I just posted. I have my top 10, and hopefully I could potentially be doing one for our website. Make sure to download the TWSN mobile app. You can access all of our content there for free. So I will probably be doing that later down the line, but I'm very high on the two of them. I know you kind of aren't there yet with me, but I have Keon Johnson 5th and I have Jaden Springer 8th, and you can check where I have all the other guys ranked as well. But that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. Make sure to download the TWSN mobile app. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're out. Thanks for watching.